I notice the new recruits have Corporal Davon's serial number tattooed on their necks, the same Davon I buried 3 days ago under the eastern parapet. I am Guardsman Valen Krieg, 847-223 Gamma, 3rd Mortisian Infantry. They told us we're the lucky ones. We get to die standing. My life here is simple, holy. The Emperor provides structure when the galaxy offers only chaos. I wake at 400 hours, when the klaxons shriek across the trench network. 4 hours of watch, 4 hours of rest, 4 hours of maintenance, 4 hours of prayer. The rotation never changes. Consistency is a blessing in this place, where the ground shakes and the sky burns orange every night from the bombardment. My squad is 5 men. Good men. The Emperor's finest, though we're just standard infantry. There's Trooper Melak, who survived 43 days and never stops checking his lass rifle. Trooper Henders, who makes jokes about the rats and shares his obscura when the shaking gets too bad. Trooper Vin, who prays louder than anyone during artillery strikes. Trooper Goss, who used to be a hiver and knows 17 ways to prepare corpse starch into something almost edible. And Corporal Thane, who leads us with a steady hand and only flinches slightly when the Commissar walks past. We are brothers. The Imperium makes us family when blood cannot. The corpse starch rations arrive each morning in sealed tins, marked with the Administratum's seal. It tastes better than it sounds. Truly, there's a nutty quality to it, almost sweet, with a texture that reminds me of something I cannot quite remember. Home food, perhaps. I came from a hive world. I think. The name escapes me now, but that doesn't matter. Only service matters. Only the Emperor's work. My lass rifle is my soul made manifest. I clean it every day during maintenance hours. Each component disassembled with reverence. Each connection point blessed with sacred oils. Each power pack tested and retested. The Munitorum priest taught us the litany of reliable function, and I recite it while I work. A lasgun is the Emperor's gift to his soldiers. It asks only for respect, and it will serve until the end. The cold here blackens fingers if you're careless. I've seen men lose whole hands to the frost, watched the flesh turn purple, then black, then simply fall away like overripe fruit. I'm careful. I flex my fingers every hour, keep them moving, keep the blood flowing. 3 of my fingers on my left hand are already dark at the tips, but I caught it early. The medicae said I was fortunate. Only 3 fingers showing necrosis instead of the whole hand. The Emperor protects those who remain vigilant. Commissar Gredge oversees our section of the line. He is stern but fair. A towering man in his black greatcoat with the gold trim, his bolt pistol always at his hip, his eyes always watching. I witnessed him execute Private Holmes 2 weeks ago for cowardice. Holmes had refused to leave the bunker during an assault wave. Just sat there shaking, crying, begging. The Commissar's face showed no anger, only disappointment. He placed the bolt pistol against Holmes's temple and spoke the words of the Emperor's judgment. The crack of the shot still echoes in my ears at night, but I feel grateful for it. It reminds me that weakness is a sin, that fear betrays the golden throne, that discipline is the only path to redemption. The enemy sits 17 meters away across no man's land. I can hear them breathing at night when the guns fall silent for those brief moments between bombardments. Heretics mostly. Traitors to the Emperor's light. They shout obscenities in Gothic, curse the throne, worship the ruinous powers. Sometimes I hear them laughing. Sometimes I hear them screaming. It all sounds the same after a while. We've launched 6 assaults against their positions in the last month. Each time we charge across that corpse-strewn ground with our lasguns firing, our voices crying the Emperor's name, our faith carrying us forward. Each time we take casualties. Acceptable casualties. Command says we're wearing them down. That every death brings us closer to victory. I believe this. I must believe this. The medici tent sits behind our position, a plasteel structure half buried in the mud. I reported there last week after taking shrapnel in my shoulder. A small wound, hardly worth mentioning, but regulations require medical assessment for all injuries. The medici looked annoyed when I walked in. Asked why I hadn't just died on the field. I thought he was joking, testing my faith, perhaps. I laughed and said the Emperor wasn't finished with me yet. He didn't laugh back, just stitched me up quickly and sent me back to the line. At night I pray, the litany of protection that my training sergeant taught me in basic. I don't remember his name or his face, but I remember his voice speaking those words. I kiss my Aquila pendant, feel the cold metal against my lips, and know that the God Emperor watches over me. Personally, individually, I am one guardsman among billions, but he sees me. He knows my service. He counts every breath I take in his name. I've survived 847 days now. The regimental average is 17 minutes and 23 seconds from first deployment to death. I heard the logistics officer mention this during a supply briefing. I wasn't meant to hear it, but the numbers stuck in my mind. 847 days means I've outlived my expected survival time by a considerable margin. This fills me with pride. Perhaps I'm blessed. Perhaps the Emperor has plans for me. Small victories sustain us. Yesterday I found a dry spot in the trench to sleep. A small miracle. The day before, Goss managed to cook the corpse starch into something that almost tasted like real meat. Last week we received half rations instead of quarter rations. These moments of grace remind us that the Emperor provides even in darkness. New orders came this morning. Another assault at dawn. Acceptable casualty rates estimated at 73%. We've been assigned to the second wave. The first wave will soften their defenses. We will exploit the breach. This is sound tactics. This is how wars are won. I sharpen my bayonet and wait for the klaxons. My hands are steady. My faith is absolute. I am Guardsman Valen Krieg, and I serve the Golden Throne. The Emperor protects. The assault klaxons woke us at 0300 hours, earlier than usual. A good sign. It means command wants to catch the enemy unprepared during their weakest hour. We formed up in the assembly trench, 500 men shoulder to shoulder in the pre-dawn darkness. Commissar Gredge walked the line, his bootsteps splashing through the ice-cold water that pooled at our feet. He spoke the benediction of battle, his voice carrying over the distant rumble of artillery. We repeated his words. The Emperor protects. The Emperor provides. In death we find victory. In sacrifice we find grace. The first wave went over the top at 0400 exactly. I watched them climb the ladders, their silhouettes dark against the burning sky. Lasfire lit up no man's land like stars falling to earth. The enemy's heavy stubbers opened up immediately. I heard the screaming. Heard the wet impacts of rounds finding flesh. heard the calls for Medicae that went unanswered because the Medicae stay in the second wave. We waited our turn. Melak was shaking beside me. Not from fear, from eagerness. We all shook with it. The desire to serve, the need to prove our faith through action. At 04:17 hours the order came. Second wave, advance. I climbed the ladder. My hands found each rung automatically, muscle memory from dozens of previous assaults. At the top I threw myself over the parapet and began running. The ground was soft beneath my boots, soft and uneven. I didn't look down, kept my eyes on the enemy trench ahead, kept my lass rifle up, kept moving forward. Trooper Calix ran beside me. Good man, quiet, dependable. He'd survived 31 days, which made him practically a veteran in our company. His lass rifle barked beside mine as we advanced. 3 shots, 4, 5. Then something punched through his chest, and he fell. I kept running, couldn't stop. The momentum of faith carries us forward when flesh falters. Behind me, I heard Calix still firing. Even on the ground, even bleeding, he bought us covering fire. 3 more seconds of suppression. 3 seconds that let me and Henders reach a shell crater and dive for cover. He died as the Emperor intended, with his weapon in his hands and the enemy in his sights. There is no greater glory, no more perfect end. I whispered a prayer for his soul's swift journey to the Emperor's side, and continued the assault. The enemy trench was closer now. 50 meters, 40. I could see their firing positions, their hastily constructed barricades. Lass fire from our line was chewing through their defenses. We had momentum. We had faith. We had superior numbers. 30 meters. Something felt wrong. The enemy fortifications looked strange, familiar somehow. The angle of the sandbags, the placement of the firing steps, as if I'd seen this exact layout before in training. In dreams, perhaps, 20 meters, we reached their trench line, and I dropped into it with my bayonet fixed, empty, completely empty. No bodies, no equipment, no supplies, just abandoned positions, and the lingering smell of promethium. They'd withdrawn, fled before the Emperor's wrath. Henders laughed, called it a victory, said they feared us too much to stand and fight. I wanted to believe him, wanted to feel that pride. But something gnawed at the back of my mind. Command must have known. Our artillery had been ranging this position for 3 days. Our scouts must have reported the withdrawal. Yet we attacked anyway. Acceptable losses. That phrase from the briefing. 73% casualties expected. We'd taken exactly that. The math worked too perfectly. I pushed the thought away. Faith means trusting in our superiors, trusting in the chain of command that extends from my sergeant up through the officers to the Lord General himself and beyond to the Golden Throne. There are mysteries in war that Guardsmen need not understand. Ours is to serve and die, not to question. We held the captured trench for 6 hours before the withdrawal order came. During that time I found Calix's journal in the mud. Must have fallen from his pack during the assault. I opened it carefully, meaning to preserve it for his family if they could be located, if he had family. Most of us don't remember. The handwriting looked like mine, exactly like mine. Same slant to the letters, same way of forming the letter K. I read his entries and felt ice in my stomach. He wrote about the same things I wrote, the same observations about the corpse starch, the same pride in small victories, the same prayers, word for word in places, identical phrases, Brothers in faith think alike. That's what this meant. The Emperor's indoctrination is so perfect, so complete, that we all become vessels of his will. We speak with one voice because we serve one purpose. This realization filled me with joy. I am not alone. None of us are alone. We are all parts of the same holy machine. I kept the journal, placed it in my pack next to my own. A reminder of brotherhood, of unity in service. That night the Commissar came to our section during evening prayers, watched us with his dark eyes. After we finished the litany of devotion, he approached me specifically, asked how long I'd been serving. I told him 848 days. He wrote something in his data slate, said nothing, just watched me for a long moment before walking away. I felt pride at being noticed. Perhaps a commendation is coming. Perhaps my exemplary survival rate has earned recognition. The reinforcements arrived at 2100 hours, pale men with fresh uniforms and empty eyes. They filed into our trench without speaking, without acknowledging us. Each one took position at a firing step and stood at attention. I assigned them to squads, recorded their names and designations in my log. Standard procedure. One of them had Calix's name. Private Calix, same first name, same regiment number, same homeworld listed on his papers. I stared at him for a long moment. He stared back with no recognition, no understanding. It honors the fallen. That's what this is. The Administratum assigns the names of heroes to new recruits, so their legacy continues, so their sacrifice is never forgotten. A beautiful tradition. It moved me nearly to tears. I showed him to Calix's old position on the firing line, gave him the journal I'd found, told him to read it, to understand the man whose name he now carried. He took it without expression, opened to the first page, began reading in the dim light of the luminators. His lips moved as he read, forming the words silently, and I realized he was reading my handwriting, reading words that could have been mine. Reading a faith identical to my own. Brothers, all of us brothers. The Emperor protects. The Penal Legion arrived on day 853. I watched them march past our trench in their orange jumpsuits, explosive collars locked around their necks, faces blank with acceptance. 200 condemned men, traitors, cowards, and criminals, given one final chance at redemption through service. Commissar Gredge explained their purpose during morning briefing. The enemy had mined the approaches to their forward positions. Standard mine-clearing protocols would take weeks and cost valuable equipment. The Penal Legion would clear the path in hours. Their collars would detonate if they strayed from their designated corridor. Their redemption would be measured in meters advanced before detonation. Merciful. That's what this is. The Imperium offers salvation even to the fallen. These men had sinned against the Golden Throne, but through their sacrifice, they could still serve, could still die with purpose. Many Guardsmen face meaningless deaths from stray rounds or disease. These penitents would die, knowing exactly what their deaths accomplished. We watched them advance across no man's land at dawn. They walked slowly, carefully, probing the ground with metal rods. Every few meters one would find a mine. The explosion would tear him apart and mark a safe path for those behind. The collars detonated the ones who hesitated, sharp cracks followed by bodies falling. The screams carried across the distance, high and piercing at first, then fading to something that almost sounded like singing if I prayed hard enough. Hymns of sacrifice, music of redemption. By mid-morning, the path was clear. 73 penitents had given their lives. 127 remained for future operations, efficient, holy. The Emperor's mathematics made manifest. That afternoon the ecclesiarchy preacher arrived, a hunched man in red robes carrying a Crozius arcanum that crackled with power. He gathered us in the assembly trench for an emergency sermon. His voice boomed off the plasteel walls, speaking of suffering and worthiness, of how pain proves our devotion, of how the faithful are tested in fire and blood, of how every moment of agony is a prayer the Emperor hears personally. I wept, actually wept. The truth of his words cut through me like a blade. All this time I'd thought of suffering as something to endure. But it's not. It's something to embrace, to cherish. Every frozen finger, every sleepless night, every moment of terror and exhaustion is proof that I am worthy, that the Emperor deems me strong enough to bear his trials. After the sermon, I volunteered for enhancement. The Medicae had been offering stim injections to those who wanted to serve beyond normal human limits. 72 hours of continuous combat readiness. No sleep, no fatigue, just pure service. They strapped me to a gurney in the Medicae tent. The injections burned going in, 5 of them. 1 in each arm, 1 in each leg, 1 directly into my spine. The Medicae said nothing during the procedure, just worked efficiently while I screamed prayers through gritted teeth. The effects were immediate. Energy flooded my system. My heart raced. My hands stopped shaking entirely. I felt powerful, alert, ready. I served my next watch rotation with perfect focus, then the next, then the next. 72 hours without pause, without doubt, without weakness. The side effects came after. My teeth loosened in my gums. 3 fell out during morning prayers on day 856. I caught them in my hand and stared at them. Yellow and blackened at the roots. The Medicae said this was normal, that teeth were unnecessary for firing a las rifle, that less to maintain meant more efficiency. I agreed, swallowed the teeth. Waste not. My hair fell out in clumps over the following week, came away in my hands when I ran my fingers over my scalp, left my head smooth and pale. More hygienic, easier to maintain, fewer places for lice to nest. Another blessing. The tremors started on day 860. Constant shaking in my hands that made aiming difficult at first. But I adapted, learned to fire between tremors, learned to time my shots to the rhythm of the shakes. The Medicae said it showed eagerness for battle, that my body was so ready to fight it couldn't stay still. I chose to believe him. Bodies started disappearing from no man's land. I noticed it during night watch. The corpses that littered the ground between trenches, some fresh, some weeks old, would vanish by morning. I assumed burial details were working under cover of darkness. Proper and respectful. The dead deserved to be processed according to imperial rite. One night I watched the reclamation servitors at work. Grotesque things, half human, half machine, crawling across the mud on mechanical limbs. They gathered the bodies efficiently. Loaded them into wheeled containers, transported them back toward our lines. I felt grateful for such efficiency. The Adeptus Mechanicus serves the Emperor through practical application of sacred technology. Even in death we are useful. Even as corpses we contribute. More replacements arrived. Fresh uniforms, empty eyes. This time, 3 of them had names from my squad. Melak, Henders, Vin. The real Melak and Henders and Vin stood beside me as the new ones took their positions. I introduced them to each other. Original Melak met new Melak. They stared at each other without speaking. I explained that sharing names honored our brotherhood, that it proved we were all interchangeable parts in the Emperor's great machine. No man irreplaceable. Every man essential. Original Melak looked at me strangely, asked if I really believed that. I said, of course. What else could it mean? He said nothing, just returned to his position and checked his las rifle for the 100th time that day. I received promotion on day 861. Veteran Guardsman Krieg. A badge sewn onto my uniform. A notation in my service record. The commissar presented it during morning formation, announced that I was statistically anomalous, that my survival exceeded all projections, that I served as an example to others. Pride filled me, but also confusion. Why would survival be anomalous? Don't we all fight to survive? Don't we all seek to serve as long as possible? I pushed the questions away. Doubt is weakness. Faith is strength. That night I spoke with Corporal Thane, asked him how long he'd been serving. He looked at me with tired eyes, said he didn't remember, couldn't remember. That after a certain point the days blur together into one eternal moment of service. I asked if that frightened him. He laughed, a hollow sound, said fear requires hope, and hope requires belief that tomorrow will be different from today. I didn't understand. Tomorrow is always different. Each day brings new opportunities to prove our faith, new chances to serve. He just shook his head and walked away. The major offensive began on day 867. 3 full regiments committed to a simultaneous assault across a 5-kilometer front. Our objective was the heretic strong point, designated Target Primus. Intelligence reported it was heavily fortified. Command estimated we would carry the position within 18 hours, with acceptable losses. We advanced at dawn through the cleared corridor the Penal Legion had purchased with their bodies. My squad moved as one unit, disciplined and faithful. Lasfire streaked overhead. Artillery pounded the enemy positions. Smoke filled the air so thick I could barely see Melak running beside me. We reached the enemy trench and dropped in with bayonets fixed. Found resistance this time. Real fighting. Close quarters. A heretic lunged at me with a crude knife, and I put 3 las rounds through his chest. He fell and I kept moving. Cleared the position room by room, bunker by bunker. Standard urban assault doctrine. By mid-morning, we'd secured the objective. The enemy had withdrawn again, leaving only a rear guard that we eliminated quickly. I stood in what had been their command bunker, breathing hard, feeling the stims burning through my system. Victory! Another triumph for the God Emperor. Then I saw the graffiti on the wall, high Gothic script, faded but readable. Unit designations, squad mottos, names carved into the plasteel. Our names, my regiment, my company, my squad number. I recognized Corporal Thane's handwriting in a prayer scratched above a firing slit, recognized my own handwriting in a tally of confirmed kills near the bunker entrance. This was our trench, our position, the one we'd held for the last 867 days. I was certain of it. The layout matched perfectly. The distance between firing steps. The angle of the communications tunnel. Even the stain on the floor that looked like a spread eagle matched a stain I'd seen in our own bunker. Reclaiming sacred ground. That's what this was. The enemy had captured our position at some point, and now we'd taken it back. A holy cycle of war. Ground lost, and ground regained. The Emperor's territory defended even when temporarily occupied. I felt pride in this realization. Our earlier sacrifices had not been wasted. We'd simply been conducting a strategic withdrawal to lure the enemy into a trap. I found my own dog tags on a corpse in the corner of the bunker. Same serial number, 847223 Gamma. The body was weeks old, rotted beyond recognition, but the tags were intact. Clerical error, obviously. The administratum had issued duplicate tags. It happens in war. Supplies get confused, records overlap. I removed them carefully and carried them back to the supply sergeant. He looked at them, looked at me, looked at the tags hanging around my own neck, said nothing. Just took the duplicates and threw them in a bin marked for recycling. I asked if I should file a report about the error. He laughed, actually laughed, said there was no point, that errors like this happened thousands of times per day across the warfront, that the administratum didn't care about individual discrepancies as long as the overall numbers balanced. I accepted this. The Imperium is vast beyond comprehension. Perfect record-keeping across billions of soldiers on thousands of worlds is impossible. What matters is that we serve, not that we're counted correctly. Commissar Gredge summoned me that evening. I reported to his quarters expecting commendation for my performance during the assault. Instead, he sat me down and spoke quietly, asked about my loyalty, about my faith, about whether I'd noticed anything unusual. I told him the truth, that my faith was absolute, that I served without question, that the only unusual thing was how blessed I'd been to survive so long. He watched me carefully while I spoke, those dark eyes searching my face for something. Then he said something that confused me. He said that survival itself could be suspicious, that the Emperor values sacrifice more than endurance, that a guardsman who lived too long might be avoiding his duty to die, that I should volunteer for more dangerous assignments to prove my willingness to embrace martyrdom. Fear touched me then. Real fear, not of death, but of being thought disloyal, of failing in my service through the sin of survival. I volunteered immediately, told him to assign me to any suicide mission, any forlorn hope, any assault with 0 expected survivors. I would prove my faith through action. He nodded slowly, said he would arrange it, dismissed me. I returned to my position, shaking, not from the stims this time, from the terrible possibility that I'd been wrong, that surviving was not a blessing, but a failure, that the Emperor wanted me dead, and I'd somehow avoided his holy will through cowardice I couldn't recognize. The suicide missions began the next day. I was assigned to point position in every assault, first over the trench, first through every breach, first into every bunker. I embraced it, charged forward with prayers on my lips and faith in my heart, dared the enemy to kill me, begged the Emperor to accept my sacrifice. I survived them all, every single one. Last rounds passed through the space where I'd been standing. Grenades exploded behind me. Artillery landed where I'd been moments before. I kept waking in the medici tent with no memory of how I'd gotten there. Stitches in new places, fresh scars. The medici never spoke to me, just patched me up and sent me back to the line. On day 873, I woke in Medicae for the 5th time that week. My abdomen was wrapped in fresh bandages. I had no memory of being wounded, no memory of extraction. I tried to check my service record to see if anyone had filed a casualty report. The data slate was empty, no record of my injuries, no record of treatment, as if I'd never been wounded at all. I asked the Medicae directly. He looked at me with something like pity, said I should stop asking questions, that questions led to doubt, and doubt led to heresy. That faith meant accepting what I was told without seeking understanding. I apologized, prayed for forgiveness, returned to my squad. That night the astropaths arrived, 3 of them, twisted creatures barely recognizable as human. Pale skin stretched over elongated skulls, eyes sewn shut, mouths moving constantly in silent screams. They were chained to floating gurneys, pushed by servitors, surrounded by ecclesiarchy priests chanting wards of protection. We were ordered to look away, to pray loudly, to focus on our faith while they passed. I obeyed, but I heard them anyway. Heard their screaming, heard words in languages I didn't know, heard my own thoughts spoken aloud before I'd finished thinking them. One of them turned its head toward me as it passed, smiled with too many teeth. Spoke in my mother's voice, though I couldn't remember my mother. Said I should stop fighting, that I'd already lost, that I'd been lost for 800 days, that the number kept getting higher because counting was all that remained. I covered my ears, screamed prayers, the litany of protection over and over until the astropaths were gone, until the only voice in my head was my own. But I wasn't certain anymore that the voice I heard was mine. My journal entries became confused after that. I wrote the date wrong, kept writing day 867 over and over, then correcting it, then writing it wrong again. Couldn't remember if today was 67 or 73 or 47. The numbers jumbled together. Meaningless, I wrote prayers instead. The Emperor provides, the Emperor protects, the Emperor provides. The Emperor protects, filled pages with nothing but those words, until my hand cramped, until the tremors made the letters illegible, until I couldn't tell if I was writing or if the words were writing themselves. Something was happening to me, something wrong, but wrong meant doubt, and doubt meant heresy, and heresy meant the commissar's bolt pistol against my temple. So I pushed it down, buried it, focused on service, on duty, on faith. I became efficient, stopped feeling when squad mates died, stopped learning their names, just called them by designation. Trooper 1, Trooper 2. Easier that way, cleaner. They died and new ones arrived, and the designations remained constant, even when the faces changed. Perfect efficiency. The Emperor's will made manifest in my actions. No wasted emotion, no unnecessary attachment, just pure service. I was becoming what the Imperium needed, a weapon that breathed, a tool that prayed, ammunition that could reload itself. This should have felt like victory, like transcendence, like becoming one with the Emperor's grand design. Instead, it felt like drowning, like sinking into cold water, like forgetting how to surface. But I kept my faith, clutched my Aquila pendant until it cut into my palm. Let the blood prove I was real. Let the pain prove I still existed. The Emperor protects, even if I no longer knew what he was protecting me from. The final assault came on what I believed was day 879, or perhaps day 847. The numbers no longer held meaning. Only the order mattered. Breach the enemy stronghold. No retreat. No surrender. Total commitment. We assembled in the trench at midnight. Every guardsman in the regiment. Thousands of us pressed shoulder to shoulder in the darkness. Commissar Gredge walked the line one final time. His face showed something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not determination, something closer to exhaustion. He spoke the benediction of final service, words I'd never heard in any catechism, words about duty fulfilled and cycles completed, and the Emperor's mercy in ending. I didn't understand, but I repeated them faithfully. The order came at 100 hours. We went over the top together. A human wave crashing against the enemy positions. Lasfire lit the sky. Artillery screamed overhead. I ran with my weapon raised, and the Emperor's name on my lips. Pure faith, pure devotion. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. The perfect death in perfect service. We reached the enemy bunker complex, massive ferrocrete structures half buried in the earth. I charged the nearest entrance with a dozen others. Down the corridor, through the blast doors, into the command center. Empty. Again empty. But this time something was different. The lights were on. Power flowing, equipment active, cogitator screens displaying data in streams of green text, maps on the walls showing troop positions, casualty projections, supply routes, all of it marked with Imperial icons, Aquila symbols, high Gothic script. I stopped in the center of the room, stared at the main cogitator display. It showed a tactical overview of our assault, red markers indicating our positions, blue markers indicating enemy positions. But the enemy markers were behind us, in the trenches we'd just left, and our markers were here, in what we'd been told was the enemy stronghold. Commissar Gredge entered behind me. He was alone. His bolt pistol was holstered. He looked tired. Ancient. He walked to the cogitator and entered a command sequence. The display changed. Casualty records, thousands of entries, names and serial numbers scrolling past. I saw my name. Guardsman Valen Krieg, 847-2223 Gamma. Status: terminated. Date: Day 17. Biomass reclaimed. Components redistributed. Then again. Guardsman Valen Krieg, 847-2223 Gamma. Status: terminated. Date: Day 31. Biomass reclaimed. Components redistributed. Again. And again. And again. Hundreds of entries. All the same name. All the same number. All terminated. All reclaimed. The current entry showed Day 879. Status: active. Marked for review. Due to extended operational duration beyond acceptable parameters. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The words on the screen didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. This was enemy deception. Chaos corruption. Heretical lies designed to break my faith. No. The Commissar's voice was quiet. Gentle, even. This is the Imperium. This is what we are. What we've always been. He pulled up more files, showed me production reports, biomass intake from battlefield reclamation, processing efficiency rates, reconstitution protocols, neurological imprinting procedures, the entire system laid bare in clinical Imperial documentation. Terra needs billions of guardsmen. He spoke like he was teaching a child. We fight across thousands of worlds, against xenos and heretics and demons that want to extinguish humanity. The numbers don't work, can't work. Not with natural reproduction, not with conventional recruitment. He showed me the calculations, the raw mathematics of Imperial warfare. Casualties in the millions daily. Unsustainable. Impossible. Unless the losses weren't really losses. Unless the dead could be recycled, reprocessed, reformed, redeployed. Your faith is real. He looked at me with something like sympathy. Your service is real. Your devotion is real. You've been serving faithfully. You just finally lived long enough to see how the machinery works. I rejected it, screamed that he was lying, that this was heresy, that the Emperor would never permit such desecration. That we were his faithful warriors, not raw materials to be processed like ore. The Emperor is dead. Gredge's words cut through my screaming. Has been for 10,000 years, a corpse on a golden throne. But his Imperium endures because we make it endure. Through efficiency, through necessity, through doing what must be done to keep humanity alive in a galaxy that wants us extinct. He pulled up surveillance footage, showed me the medica tent, showed me the servitors working in the darkness, disassembling bodies, sorting components, biomass into nutrient vats, viable organs into medical supplies, skeletal structure ground into powder, neural tissue extracted and processed, everything reclaimed, nothing wasted, showed me the reconstitution chambers, vat-grown flesh shaped around recovered bone structures, neurological imprinting from recovered brain tissue, memories implanted, faith programmed, each new iteration slightly degraded from the last but functionally identical, combat effective, faithful, expendable. You are iteration 847. He spoke with tired patience. Each time you die, we recover what remains, process it, rebuild you, redeploy you. Most iterations last 17 minutes, some last hours. You keep surviving longer. It's creating administrative problems. I looked at my hands, saw the scars, the places where flesh didn't quite match, the color variations in my skin. Patches, all of it patches. Pieces of different bodies assembled into something approximating human. Approximating me. The corpse starch. The words came out broken. We've been eating ourselves, he nodded. Previous iterations, failed batches, damaged components, all processed, all reclaimed. The Imperium wastes nothing, not even its own dead. I fell to my knees. My Aquila pendant hung against my chest. Cold metal, meaningless metal. The prayers I'd memorized felt hollow. The faith I'd clung to revealed as programming, conditioning, neurological imprinting designed to keep me obedient through cycle after cycle of death and rebirth. But the cruelest truth was this. Even knowing, even understanding, I still felt it, still felt the Emperor's presence, still felt devotion burning in my chest, still wanted to serve. The programming was too deep, too perfect. The faith was real, even if its origins were manufactured. Why tell me? I looked up at Gredge. Why let me see this? Because you earned it. He helped me to my feet. 847 iterations. Most guardsmen never make it past 50. You've served faithfully across nearly 900 cycles. You deserve to know what your service has been, what it will continue to be. He showed me the final display. My next deployment date. Tomorrow, after processing, after reformatting, after the memories of this moment were erased and I became Valen Krieg again, fresh, faithful, ready to serve. There's a choice. Gredge drew his bolt pistol. Not to threaten, to offer. I can end you now, permanently. Complete biomass recycling, with no reconstitution, true death, final rest, or you can return to the cycle. Forget this, serve faithfully, die and be reborn, and die again until the Imperium no longer needs you. I stared at the weapon, thought about oblivion, about ending, about escaping this nightmare. But the Imperium needs soldiers. Humanity needs defenders. The galaxy is full of things that want us dead. Real things. Terrible things. And if this is how we survive, if this is the price, then someone has to pay it. The Emperor is dead, but his purpose endures. Protect humanity. Preserve our species. Whatever the cost, I am that cost. Have been for 847 iterations, will be for however many more the Imperium requires. Send me back, my voice was steady. Reformat me. Redeploy me. I'll serve faithfully. I'll die when needed. I'll return when required. Gregg looked at me for a long moment, then holstered his weapon, nodded slowly. Some iterations develop awareness, most don't. Doesn't matter. The cycle continues. He led me from the command bunker, back through the corridors, toward the Medici processing center. I saw the servitors waiting. Saw the gurney. Saw the neural probe that would erase this conversation, this understanding, this moment of terrible clarity. One question. I stopped at the entrance. Does it hurt? The processing? Every time. Gregg's honesty was almost kind. But you never remember. That's the mercy. I lay down on the gurney, let them strap me in, watched the neural probe descend toward my skull, felt the first cold touch of metal against my temple. My last thought before darkness. The Emperor protects. Even if he's dead. Even if we're just meat. Even if none of it matters. The Emperor protects. Because we make him protect. Through our service. Through our sacrifice. Through our willingness to be broken and reformed and broken again. For humanity. Always for humanity. The probe activated. Everything went white. I woke in the Medici tent. My head felt hollow, empty, like something had been scooped out and replaced with Jing air. The ceiling above me was stained plasteel, familiar somehow, though I couldn't remember why. A Medici stood over me, same tired eyes I'd seen before. Or had I? Memory felt slippery, uncertain. He checked my vitals without speaking, adjusted something in the IV line running into my arm, made a notation on his data slate. "You're cleared for duty," his voice was flat. "Report to your squad." I sat up slowly. My body felt wrong. Not painful exactly. Just wrong. Like wearing clothing that didn't quite fit. I looked down at my hands, saw scars I didn't remember earning, saw discoloration in the skin, patches of slightly different tone, as if pieces of me belonged to different people. The thought disturbed me. I pushed it away. Battle wounds heal strangely sometimes. That's all this was. I dressed in the uniform laid out beside the gurney. It had my name stenciled on it. Valen Krieg, 848-223 Gamma. The number felt wrong. Hadn't I been 847? Or was that someone else? The memories wouldn't settle. Kept shifting like water. Outside the Medici tent, the world looked normal. Trenches stretching in both directions. Guardsmen at their positions. The distant rumble of artillery. The smell of promethium and rot and wet earth. Home. This was home. But something felt missing. Something important. I couldn't grasp what. I found my squad at our designated position. 5 men I should have known. Their faces were familiar, but their names escaped me. I checked my data slate for the roster. Trooper Melak, Trooper Henders, Trooper Vin, Trooper Goss, Corporal Thane. Yes. These were my brothers. We'd served together for days, weeks maybe. The timeline felt uncertain. Thane looked at me strangely when I reported, asked if I was all right. I said yes. Why wouldn't I be? He didn't answer, just turned back to his firing position. The day passed normally. Watch rotation, maintenance, prayer, rations that tasted sweet and familiar. I performed my duties automatically, muscle memory carrying me through tasks I couldn't quite remember learning. During evening prayers, I held my Aquila pendant and felt nothing. The metal was cold, the symbol meaningless. I recited the words of the litany of protection, but they felt hollow in my mouth, like speaking a language I didn't understand. This terrified me. Faith was everything. Faith was what separated us from the enemy. Without faith, I was just meat holding a las rifle. Just meat waiting to rot. I prayed harder, louder, forced devotion into words that felt empty. The Emperor protects, the Emperor provides. I repeated it until the words became sounds, became noise, became nothing. Melak asked me to stop, said I was screaming the prayers instead of speaking them. I hadn't noticed. That night I couldn't sleep, lay in my position staring at the sky, watching artillery arc overhead in beautiful deadly curves, listening to the sounds of the war front, trying to remember why I was here, trying to remember anything before waking in Medici. The memories were there. I could feel them, but they were behind glass, distant. Watching them was like watching someone else's life, someone who looked like me, sounded like me, but wasn't me. Who was I before? The question gnawed at me. What had I seen? What had I done? Why did the thought of the Medici tent fill me with dread? I opened my journal, found pages of entries in handwriting that looked like mine, read about faith and duty and service, read prayers and observations and daily reports, all written by Valen Krieg, all written by me. But I didn't remember writing them, didn't remember the events described. The words were mine, but the experiences belonged to someone else. On the last page was an entry that made my hands shake. It was dated today, written in my handwriting, but I had no memory of writing it. The Emperor is dead. The Imperium recycles us. I am iteration 848. I chose to return. I chose this. I stared at the words, felt ice in my stomach. This was heresy. Madness. Chaos, corruption, manifesting in my own journal. I should report it immediately. Burn the book. Pray for purification. But something stopped me. Some deep instinct that said these words were true. That I had written them. That iteration 848 meant something terrible and real. I tore out the page, burned it with my lighter. Watched the paper curl and blacken. Watched the heretical words disappear into ash. But they stayed in my mind. Wouldn't leave. The Emperor is dead. We are recycled. I am iteration 848. No, I rejected it. Pushed it down. The Emperor lives. He sits upon the golden throne and watches over humanity. My faith is real. My service matters. I am Guardsman Valen Krieg, and I serve the Imperium faithfully. I recited this over and over until I believed it, until the doubt faded, until faith returned like warmth to frozen limbs. By morning, I felt better, stronger. The hollow feeling remained, but I'd learned to ignore it. Learned to function despite the emptiness. This was growth. This was becoming a better soldier. Commissar Gredge visited our position during morning inspection, looked at me carefully, asked how I was feeling. I told him I was ready to serve, ready for anything. His expression was unreadable. He made a notation on his data slate and moved on. The days began to blur together after that. Watch, rotation, maintenance, prayer, rations. Watch, rotation, maintenance, prayer. A perfect cycle. Clean. Simple. No questions, no doubts, just service. I stopped writing in my journal, stopped trying to remember. Memory was weakness. The past was irrelevant. Only the present moment mattered. Only the next order, the next prayer, the next trigger pull. I became efficient, cold, exactly what the Imperium needed. But sometimes at night I still heard words in my own voice. Words I didn't remember speaking. The Emperor is dead. We are recycled. I chose this, and sometimes I wondered if the choice was real. If any of this was real. If I was real. But wondering was doubt, and doubt was heresy, and heresy meant death. So I stopped wondering, stopped thinking, stopped being anything except a weapon that breathed, the perfect guardsman, empty but faithful, hollow but obedient, dead inside but still serving. I told myself this was victory. This was transcendence. This was becoming one with the Emperor's will. I told myself this until I believed it, or until I forgot what belief felt like. Same thing, really. The Emperor protects. Even if I could no longer feel his protection. Even if protection was just another word for processing. Even if none of it mattered, because I would forget again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until the numbers ran out, and some future iteration of me stood where I stood now, wondering why everything felt so empty. I cleaned my lass rifle, checked my ammunition, waited for the next order. Ready to serve, ready to die, ready to forget. Again, I wake in the trench. The first thing I see is the grey sky above, streaked with smoke and burning promethium. The first thing I feel is cold. The first thing I know is that I am blessed to serve. My name is Guardsman Valenkrieg. 848-2223 Gamma, 3rd Mortisian Infantry. This is day 1 of my service, and I am filled with pride. The God Emperor has chosen me to defend humanity against the darkness. What greater honor could exist? I sit up and check my equipment. My las rifle is pristine. Factory fresh. The power pack hums with sacred energy. My uniform is clean, my boots unscuffed, my Aquila pendant shining against my chest. Everything is perfect. Everything is new. Around me, my squad prepares for the day. I study their faces, commit their names to memory. Trooper Melak, who checks his weapon compulsively. Trooper Henders, who makes quiet jokes. Trooper Vin, who prays constantly. Trooper Goss, who knows how to make the rations taste better. Corporal Thane, who leads us with steady hands. These are my brothers. We will serve together. Fight together. Perhaps die together. The thought brings me comfort rather than fear. Death in service is the highest calling, the sweetest end. I ask Corporal Thane how long the regiment has been holding this position. He looks at me strangely. A long time, he says. Long enough that it doesn't matter anymore. I don't understand what he means, but I don't press. He's a veteran, survived 30 days according to his badge. His wisdom comes from experience I haven't earned yet. The morning ration arrives, corpse starch in sealed tins. I've never tasted it before, but it's surprisingly good. Sweet, rich, with a texture that feels familiar somehow, though I can't place why. I eat every bite, waste nothing. The Imperium provides, and we must be grateful. During first watch, I observe no man's land. 17 meters of churned earth and scattered debris, separating us from the enemy positions. So close I can hear them moving, hear them breathing. The distance seems wrong somehow, dangerously close. But command knows best. They've calculated the optimal defensive spacing. My job is to trust and obey. I notice something odd during my watch. The new recruits arriving to reinforce other squads have familiar faces. One of them has a serial number tattooed on his neck that matches Corporal Davon from 3rd Squad. But Davon is standing right there at his position. I can see him. Must be honoring a family member. Or perhaps they're brothers. The Imperium often recruits from the same bloodlines. It makes sense. Faithful families produce faithful soldiers. Maintenance hour arrives, and I disassemble my Lasrifle with care. Each component is sacred. Each connection point blessed. I've done this before. I'm certain I've done this before. My hands know the motions without thinking. Muscle memory from training, that's all. But training feels distant, foggy. I can't remember my training sergeant's name. Can't remember my home world. Can't remember anything before waking in this trench this morning. This concerns me for a moment. Then I realize it's a blessing. The Emperor has purified my mind, removed all distractions, all attachments to a life before service. Now I can focus completely on my duty, on the holy work of war. I am grateful, truly grateful. During evening prayer, I recite the litany of protection with my squad. The words flow easily, as if I've spoken them 1,000 times, as if they're carved into my very soul. The Emperor protects, the Emperor provides. In death we find victory. In sacrifice we find grace. The faith is real. I feel it burning in my chest, filling the hollow places, giving meaning to existence. Without this faith, I would be nothing, just meat holding a weapon. But with faith, I am a warrior of the Imperium, a defender of humanity. A servant of the Golden Throne. Commissar Gredge walks the line during final inspection. His eyes are tired, ancient. When he reaches my position, he stops, studies me carefully, asks my designation. I report proudly. 848, 223 Gamma. He makes a notation on his data slate, says nothing, moves on. I feel honored to be noticed. Perhaps I'll earn commendation. Perhaps I'll prove myself worthy of recognition. I promise myself I will serve faithfully, die bravely, make the Emperor proud. That night I begin my journal. Record the date, day 1. Record my observations, my duties, my prayers. This will be my testament, my record of service. Future Guardsmen can read it and understand what it means to serve faithfully. I write about how lucky we are, how blessed. We get to die standing. We get to face the enemy with weapons in our hands and faith in our hearts. So many billions live meaningless lives in hive cities, toiling in factories, never seeing the glory of battle. But we are chosen. We are the Emperor's warriors. As I write, my hand moves across the page with strange familiarity. The handwriting looks old, practiced, as if I've written these exact words before. But that's impossible. This is my first entry, my first day. I shake off the feeling, focus on the words, on recording truth, on preserving this moment of perfect faith. Outside the trench, the artillery falls in steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, like a machine, like a prayer made manifest. The sound is beautiful, holy. It lulls me toward sleep. But before I close my journal, I notice something. A faint mark on the cover. Numbers scratched into the leather. 1, 17, 43, 156, 278, 394, 521, 633, 712, 847. Then nothing. Space for more. I don't understand what they mean. Perhaps it's a manufacturing mark. Perhaps previous owners. The Munitorum reuses equipment. Nothing is wasted in the Imperium. I add my own mark below the others. 848. My designation. My number. My identity. It feels right somehow. Completing a sequence. Continuing a pattern. I close the journal. Place it carefully in my pack. Tomorrow I will write again. Record my continued service. Build a chronicle of faith. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. As many days as the Emperor grants me. 17 minutes or 17 years, however long he needs me. I am ready. I am faithful. I am Guardsman Valenkrieg. The Emperor protects. I believe this absolutely, without question, without doubt. The faith burns pure and true in my heart. It will carry me through whatever comes, through horror and death and darkness. Because that's what it means to serve, to believe even when understanding fails, to trust even when nothing makes sense, to have faith even when faith is all that remains. In the distance I hear screaming from the Medicae tent. It sounds like laughter if I pray hard enough. Sounds like singing if I try. I focus on my Aquila pendant, on the cold metal against my skin, on the weight of my lass rifle beside me. These things are real. These things are true. Everything else is just noise. I close my eyes. Tomorrow I will serve faithfully. Tomorrow I will fight bravely. Tomorrow I will prove my worth. And if tomorrow I die, I will die standing. As the Emperor intended, as we are blessed to do. My last thought before sleep. I notice the new recruits have Corporal Davin's serial number tattooed on their necks. Strange, but everything is strange at first. In time, it will all make sense. In time, I will understand. The Emperor protects, always, forever, until the numbers run out and the cycle begins again, and someone else wakes in this trench wondering why everything feels so familiar, and so empty, and so perfectly, terribly right. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight I am Valenkrieg. I am faithful. I am ready. That is enough. It has to be enough, because it's all that remains. This concludes another classified file from the Imperial Records Division. If you enjoyed this, please like this video and subscribe for more forbidden knowledge from the archives. Remember, in the Imperium, even ammunition learns to pray.